Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to today's bonus upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's bonus upload, shall we? On the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula lies an abandoned ghost town called Portlock, with only a few rotting houses left of the once vibrant village. Although the Aleut people have lived on the southern tip of the Kenai Peninsula for thousands of years, no one had a settlement in the Portlock area until 1780s. This thriving town remained until everyone abandoned the village in the 1950s, with most residents moving to nearby villages down the coast. A mine tunnel, house pilings, and rusted cannery equipment are all that remain of Portlock, and the reason why is terrifying. An unexplained hairy creature continuously assaulted and stalked the villagers, murdering them and leaving their bodies until they finally all abandoned the area. Portlock, Alaska, lies on the southern end of the Kenai Peninsula in south-central Alaska. The village of Portlock was established when Captain Nathaniel Portlock of the Royal British Navy landed there in 1787. It was unexplored, a beautiful area filled with fish and plenty of space. Residents in the nearby villages of Seldovia, Nunwelk, and Port Graham also report that the area is haunted, including Portlock, also called Port Chatham, Chatham Bay, and Chrome, the site of the chromium mine. Portlock began to become well known as one of the creepy places in Alaska. Many are afraid to visit the area due to the unexplained circumstances that continued to happen in this small town. In 1905, it was reported that all of the workers left the cannery jobs due to something mysterious that was bothering the camp. The cannery workers returned the next season, but unexplained events were continually reported. There was an air of fear and the mystery that began to pervade the small town. Hunters and gold miners who headed into the mountains started to disappear. In 1931, one man that was chopping wood was found murdered, seemingly by a single blow that seemed stronger than a human could manage. This alarmed the townspeople. One group hunting a moose reported finding giant footprints also stalking the same animal. They arrived at the site of a bloody battle, and no moose was found. Footprints over 18 inches long headed from that spot into the foggy mountains. Occurrences like these began to show up regularly. One resident saw a huge, hairy man destroying fish wheels along the beach. He ran back to get his gun, and when he returned, the beast just stared at him and walked off. With these sightings, unease began to ramp up in the town. Bodies that were recovered having washed down the river into the lagoon had strange wounds no bear could make. The loss of these lies took a toll on the small community, and fear set in. People started to leave. With unexplained disappearances and murders, no one felt they could take a chance and continue to live there. Residents took off in a mass in 1949, leaving their homes, the nearby chromium mine, the cannery, the teacher's cottage, a large schoolhouse to return to the wilderness. This left Portlock as an abandoned town in Alaska, and one many people never wanted to return to. Only the postmaster remained. After a year alone, the post office closed in 1950, and the last resident of Portlock left town. Even the postmaster couldn't continue on in this town. This town experienced over 50 years of hauntings, murders, and disappearances before the townspeople gave in and left. In the local dialect of Alunique, a language of the area, the creature is called Nendaina, half man, half beast. In the 1970s, fishermen forced to take refuge from a storm reported something strange walked through their camp on 2 feet. It terrified them, and they left as soon as possible. 70 years after the hauntings started, they were still continuing when people visited the area. The ghost town of Portlock, Alaska, has a mysterious story. Whether or not this is a stronghold of Bigfoot in Alaska, you can decide for yourself. The disappearances and the bodies found were too horrible for anyone to continue living in this small town. Port Chatham, a bay on the southern tip of the Kenai, and a former village of the same name, hardly seems like a setting for inexplicable terror and fright, but a series of mysterious disappearances and death, where the Kenai Mountain narrows before plunging into the North Pacific, gave birth to rumors that began in the 1930s and continue to this very day. And the rumors all point to the same thing. Something's not right around Port Chatham. Take, for instance, Andrew Kamluck, who had gone out logging in 1931. He was found dead in the woods from a blow to the head. A piece of logging equipment nearby may have been used as a weapon. Around the same time, Elder Simon Kresnikoff of nearby Port Graham, present-day Nanowellick, said that the gold miner headed out for a day and just disappeared. No sign of the prospector was ever found. Sometime later, Tom Larson went out to chop wood for fish traps when he saw something large and hairy on the beach. He ran back home for his rifle, and when he returned to the water's edge, this creature just stared at him. Larson never could explain why he didn't fire. Then in 1973, an Anchorage newspaper ran a piece on a retired school teacher who had taught in Port Chatham during World War II. She told of cannery workers who went into the mountains to hunt Dall sheep and bear, but never returned. Search parties found no trace of them. Then rumors spread that a mutilated body, torn and dismembered in a fashion that did not resemble wounds from a bear attack, had been swept by the rains down off the mountain into a lagoon. Other rumors include specifics of the beast's features. Hunters, following signs of a moose, came across man-like footprints that exceeded 18 inches in length. As they closed in on the moose, they realized that they and the owner of the big feet were tracking the same animal. The hunters soon came across matted down grass that held indication of an apparent life and death struggle. Beyond the grass, the hunters found no moose track, but the large man-like footprints continued upward into the cloud-draped mountains. The history of the human habitation around Port Chatham is relatively short. even though the crock of her sheltered bay offers protection from the turbulent ocean. Captain Nathaniel Portlock, a member of the British Royal Navy, found sanctuary here in 1786 during his Alaskan expedition and praised the site. Around 1900, an American firm brought in a fleet of fishing boats and built a cannery to take advantage of the calm waters and the healthy run of salmon. The Russian Alonik village of Port Chatham grew around the cannery, and by all accounts, it was quaint, tidy, and a beautiful setting nestled between the sea and the vistas of snow-covered peaks. By 1921, residents established a post office. In an interview that ran in October of 2009 edition of the Homer Tribune, Nanawelk elder Melina Helen Kell, who was born in Port Chatham in 1934, gave insight into the demise of her hometown. She explained that her parents, along with the rest of the village, grew weary of being terrorized by a creature the Alunik called the Nanadina, half man, half beast. Said that many residents refused to venture into the surrounding forests and over time abandoned their homes and the village school and moved up the coast to Port Graham. Only the postmaster remained in Port Chatham, but the post office closed in 1950. Earlier records made by Portlock Cannery Management showed that the site had been vacated once before. The cannery supervisor noted in 1905 that all the native workers evacuated the area because of something in the forest, but they returned to work at the cannery the following year. The stories did not stop with the abandonment of the village. A goat hunter in 1968 claimed to have been chased by a creature while he was hunting in the area. In 1973, 3 hunters took shelter during a 3-day storm and claimed that each night something walked around their tent on what sounded like 2 feet. In 1990, an Anchorage paramedic was called out to aid a 70-year-old native who had suffered a heart attack, but was incarcerated in the Eagle River Jail north of the city. While treating a man, a paramedic happened to mention he had hunted in the area of Port Chatham. The elderly man suddenly sat up, grabbed the medic by the shirt, and asked, "Did it bother you? Did you see it?" This is a recount of that last part of the story. I don't belong to any UFO group or anything like that, but this actually happened to me. I've told a few trusted friends about it, but never bothered to write it down. I'll try to relate it as accurately to memory allows. In 1990, while working as a paramedic in Anchorage, we got a call out on an alarm for a man having a heart attack at a state jail in Eagle River. He was a native man in his 70s, and after I got him stabilized with IVs, O2, and cardiac drugs, my partner and I began to transport him to the native hospital in Anchorage. En route to the hospital, I had time to talk to this gentleman, who was Aleut from the native village of Port Graham, a remote village on the lower end of the Cook Inlet. Well, as usual with me, the topic eventually drifted to hunting and fishing, and I casually mentioned to him that I and 2 other hunting buddies were once weathered in at the upper lagoon at Dogfish Bay, only a few miles from his home in Port Graham. The lagoon was about as beautiful and wild a place as I had ever seen in my 35 years in Alaska. Well, when I said that I had spent some time in Dogfish, this old man sat up on the gurney and grabbed me by the front of my shirt. He got right up to my face and said, "Did it bother you?" Well, with that question, the hair stood up on the back of my head. I said, yes. Did you see it? Was his next question. I said, no. Did you see it? He said, no, but my brother's seen it. It chased him. This old Alet and I were talking about the same thing, but we never used the word Bigfoot or legend or anything like that. But we both knew what we were talking about. You see, in August of '73, 3 of us were bow hunting for goat and blackies in what was then the remote wilderness of the lower Coconut, when a storm forced us to take shelter in Dogfish Bay Lagoon. We beached our skiff and let the tide run her dry. After a dinner of broiled salmon, we turned to our tent. Back in those days, the best tent I had was a dark green canvas job with a center pole, no windows or floor. We left the fire burning and cleaned the pots and pans so as not to attract bears during the night and turned in. The sky was clear, but the wind was howling through the old-growth timber that lined the shore. Sometime around 2 in the morning, my friend Dennis woke me by squeezing my leg. I could dimly see his face in the tent. His finger was across his lips. I listened, then I heard it. A step. A man was quietly walking outside of our tent, taking very deliberate steps. Not a bear. Scenes from the movie Deliverance flashed through my mind. We woke up Joe, the 3rd member of our party, with the same leg grab and finger to the lips. The walking, or rather sneaking, continued until half circled our tent. Then all went quiet except for the wind. We had our bows and the '06 leaning against a tree outside of the tent, so somehow we talked Joe into belly crawling out the tent to get the rifle. We were scared shitless, I tell you. The next day, the night of the storm continued to blow. We saw several black bear on the salmon stream at the head of the lagoon during the evening hunt, but had no chance for a shot. We didn't talk about what happened that night. Too embarrassed, I guess, to be scared by a black bear that sounded like a man. We got back to camp early, built a big fire, and sat around it. Ate dinner until around midnight. In August, there is still some light in the sky until about 10 or 11. I recall that we were all embarrassed about being afraid about coming of night. We had a flashlight and the rifle in the tent between us, locked and loaded. I finally dozed off but woke right up when Dennis squeezed my leg. The illuminated hands on my watch showed 2:30. Joe was already sitting up and had the rifle in hand. I heard the first step, not more than 10 feet from the back of the tent. Slowly, then another, and another. Whatever this was, it sounded like it was walking on 2 feet. It made the same semicircle around the tent. When we finally got enough courage to crawl out of the tent and turn the flashlight on, we saw nothing. No tracks, nothing. The 3rd night, we decided if it bothered us again, we would come out of the tent shooting. We were actually scared. It never came back the 3rd night, and the following day, we had a break in the weather and got the heck out of there. Never told anybody about this experience for several years until about 1979, when I happened to be reading an old Alaskan sportsman magazine published in 1935. In the letters to the editor, a woman wrote that she recently found a letter written by some distant relative of hers who was a school teacher at the cannery in Portlock Bay. The year was 1905. She quoted from the letter. It said that the cannery employed a small group of Aleut from the small village of Portlock Bay during salmon season. Their camp was about a mile from the cannery buildings. One day all the Aleut moved out of the village and paddled their bidarks back to Port Graham. The letter said that the Aleut claimed that a hairy man was bothering and frightened them to the point where they had to leave. I have since done some research into the subject and found written histories of natives from Seldovia to Port Graham being frightened and bothered by something. They even have a name for it. It doesn't translate into English very well. Quickly, the word is Nandina, which is spelled very strangely. It's Nantiinaq. These accounts mostly take place during the first half of the 1900s and are native related, but not all. I talked to one white guy who in 1968 got the heebie-jeebies scared out of him while coming down an alder-choked gully while on a goat hunt in Portlock, Alaska. Most of these accounts precede the Bigfoot hype that began to appear in the 60s and 70s in the Northwest. Well, anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, folks, so that was a little bit of experiences out of Portlock, Alaska. Now let's jump into some very terrifying encounters with dogmen and crawler-like creatures. All right, folks, so when I had the privilege of going to the Conjuring House and spending the night doing a overnight paranormal investigation, I learned a lot of different cryptid experiences that happened in that area. And there were quite a few, and that's what I'm going to share with you right now. So tonight's first encounter, as you may know, when I changed the channel's name, I started to do a little bit of ghost hunting around my home. I have an SLS camera, an EMF reader, EVP recorder. I have a new spirit box, a new ghost box, and a new Envoy. But I'm going to be going to the Conjuring House around my birthday. And this is a very strange experience with a cryptid around the Conjuring House. Let's get into it. So me and a friend, Jay, back in 2018, used to do a lot of paranormal explorations, especially because we are from Rhode Island and there are a lot of experiences in the areas with a lot of crazy history. An example is the woods a block from my house that has these stone steps in the middle of it, completely out of the way from everything. Basically, long story short, the stairs were from a church that burnt down long ago, and rumor has it people died in that fire, and that's why the woods are haunted now. Me and a friend B saw some crap in those woods as well. Different story. But with that image in your head now, you can understand Rhode Island has a lot of paranormal activity. Now, back to the main experience. Me and Jay one night found out about the Conjuring House. It was like a 20-minute drive from us, so we decided to check it out. It was about 2 in the morning when we started driving there, and a lot of weird stuff started to happen when we got to the first road on the way to the house. For reference to how creepy this area was, it was practically out in the middle of the sticks, barely any streetlights, and lastly, the energy was the strangest. It felt like we were being watched all the way to the house. When the GPS said about 3 minutes away from the house, Jay's radio started glitching, repeating the chorus from R.I.P. by Joji. Needless to say, the vibe got a lot darker after that, and when we actually arrived, when we got there, not much happened until we were about to leave. The vibe was growing worse the longer we stayed, and Jay heard something, so we left because the energy was something different. As we were leaving, the GPS quickly made us turn to a road different from the way we came. As soon as we were approaching the original entrance to the street of the Conjuring House, at the time we didn't think much of it because we were just trying to leave the area because of the way it was making us feel. This road was a lot creepier than the others because of how it brought us directly in the middle of the woods. Even some parts were not paved, if I remember correctly, with really weird-looking houses spaced apart. Well, as we were going down the road, I looked down at my phone, and in that second, Jay starts punching my arm. "Look up, bro. What is that? Look up." And as I look up, the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life jumps across the road like 5 feet away from the car and into the woods at a speed of a cheetah. To give you guys a better idea of what it looked like, first, it was as tall as a kangaroo. And I mean the tall ones. The thing had to be 7 feet tall. Second, it was jumping in medium-sized jumps. Not sure what the word for the movement is, but quick. How a gear works. That's how smooth and fast this thing's legs touched the ground, propelled forward and repeated. Like in 4 seconds it took to drive the car to where it was on the road. It was like hundreds of feet away into the woods. Lastly, the most amazing but strange thing about it was its appearance. It looked like moving energy, a bunch of lines moving together in the shape of this animal-looking thing, and its colors were crazy. It was a combination of neon brown, neon dark green, orange, and some other less noticeable colors that sort of filled in the rest of the shape it was taking. As we drove by, we freaked out, of course, and talked about it the whole ride home, trying to make sense of what we had seen. We even tried to find the road we were on that night on 3 separate occasions after that to see if we could maybe see it again, but we never found that road again. That night changed my life because I never thought I'd see anything like that close. But since then, I've been trying to find answers. Tonight's second encounter. This happened in Champaign, Illinois. I live in a neighborhood in town a few blocks away from the main city streets around Madison University, if you're familiar with the area. I was in the front yard doing some yard work. The west side of the yard is lined with tall evergreens, but they are sparse enough to see through to the lot next to me and the house on the other side of the lot. I paused from working and noticed some movement through the trees, an animal running, trotting from the back of the lot to the street. I decided to watch it just in case it was the dog from the house on the other side of the lot that needed to be returned to its owner. When the animal entered the street, my immediate thought was, oh, it's a baby deer. It ran like a deer and it was about the size, but then I realized that this was not a deer. Its body looked more like a dog. It really looked like a cross between a deer and a dog, but looked like neither. It just didn't look right. It was a solid tan color, no spots or marks, and had a long, slender tail, muzzle/snout, and body. I believe it also had long ears that it held back against its head. It made absolutely no sound as it ran and only looked straight ahead as it crossed the street into the overgrown backyard of the abandoned house. I only saw it for a few seconds, but I got a good look at it. I know it could have been a dog, but it just didn't move like a dog. My husband thinks it's some sort of cryptid. We're tempted to explore the abandoned house and see what we can find. Today's third encounter. When I was 15 or so, me and a group of friends all slept over at the leader of our friends' group's house. This dude lived in the most absolutely rural area of our rural town, basically in the middle of the woods. A house just absolutely surrounded by thick walls of trees. In the evening, we decided to go out and start a bonfire deep in his woods. So we packed up, got all our materials, and went straight into the woods. On our way to the spot we had made our campfire at, he told us about how messed up and creepy his woods are, and the numerous things he has seen. White, skinny figures peeking around his shed, staring at him and running off when he went to look for it. Screaming and whispering from the woods, figures watching him, all that good stuff. It set the mood pretty well. At around 7 at night, we had a campfire set, and it was pitch black outside, as it was the middle of winter in New Hampshire. I can still remember how creepy the whole vibe was that evening. You see, you couldn't see a single thing, besides the ring of light coming out of the fire. Everything else was just a black wall of nothingness, and the sound of the forest was very quiet. It was almost deafening. We ended up needing more firewood or whatever, we were using for the campfire, so our friend took me to go with him to get it, without a flashlight or any other source of light. Me and him walked the 1.5 mile long trail back to his house in complete darkness. It was all good. We're talking, joking with each other, having a good time, just hanging out when the first noises started. He immediately made me stop talking. To my left and to my right was a bunch of different sounds, screaming, laughing, talking, whispering, shouting, people saying inaudible words. It sounded like there was something around 20 people around us. The natural night vision had set in a decent amount. I looked over at my friend, who had his head completely down and didn't say a single word, known for being a complete goofball and a wild, funny guy. I had never seen him look so shaken and serious. He had this look to him that still kind of haunts me to this day. Knowing him as our fearless leader type of our group and seeing him so shaken up and afraid was very unsettling. I started to say something along the lines of, "What the hell?" before he cut me off and told me to be quiet and face forward and not to pay attention to any of the sounds. I did what he said, and the next 3 or so minutes were very uncomfortable and terrifying. I remember feeling sick to my stomach. By the time we reached his house, the sounds had stopped, and we both grabbed what we needed to grab in silence. That's when I could really listen to the sheer quietness of the night. No birds, no sticks falling, not a sound. Absurdly quiet. We walked back to the campfire, and nothing else occurred that night. Still my most unsettling and bizarre experience that I have no explanation for. Today's fourth encounter. I may seem out of my mind, I feel like I am. The first night I heard it was the end of summer 2019. I was building my own art studio in the back of this old building. One night I stepped out onto the back deck to clean up. I was staring off into the woods that ran right next to the stairs leading up to my studio. I heard something let loose this immense, deep howling off in the distance. It had such a blood-curdling effect on the air around me, it gave me goosebumps and raised every hair on my body. And shortly after, it went silent. I heard all of the dogs in a 1 mile radius bark, yip, and howl in the direction of the roar/howl. There's no way it was a wolf or any large cat. I've heard videos and sound bites of wild cats, mountain lions making those demonic-type sounds, and it was none of that. This was a roar of a human/animal mix. I could hear it in its voice. The area of Ohio I'm in is not a place where you'd see a large cat, let alone hear one. My first thought was that it was a Wendigo coming to get me, and I don't know why that popped in my head like that. And a countless other number of things have been happening more and more, almost like intuition or something in my head. 4 weeks prior to the weird crap I've experienced, I was approached by a man about commissioning 3 art pieces of something I was not familiar with. Wendigo. More specifically, a wartime Wendigo, where it was this huge 1,000-foot tall creature, taller than a building and skyscraper, and it's made out of all of us, body parts sticking out everywhere, a face here, a face there. It was supposed to represent all of our greed and insatiable desire or want for more. Sadly, I didn't have time to work on these pieces, so I passed, but it started reminding me of my own monster that had been following me my whole life. I made some drawings of a dream/night terror I had a week before this man approached me to turn us into a Wendigo. In my dream, it was a tall, emaciated creature with an animal-like body features, legs and human-like arms crouching in my kitchen like my dog would sit, looking in the cabinets. "What are you doing, dude?" I asked. "Chill out. I'm looking for some chips or something. I'm starving," it replied. I sat up quickly and threw the blanket off because I didn't say that out loud. It turned to look at me, and the way it looked was indescribable. But I took it in every detail I could. It had huge black holes where its eyes were supposed to be, and just a jagged slit across the lower side of its face that represented a mouth with no lips, and thousands of rows of jagged teeth curled around its gums, with a large tongue sliding between them. It let out a gurgling, squelching scream. Then all of a sudden black smoky tendrils shot out where its hair was supposed to be on its head, lingering for a second, and sucked back towards its body, then boom, vanished. I made a drawing of it as soon as I woke up and tried to put the pieces together as to why it was in my kitchen, and every hair on my body stood on end because I still didn't have an answer. Fast forward 2020, June. Corona had taken over the world, and I'm sure I've lost my mind. I forgot all about it, and I'm hanging out with a friend at 3 a.m, with a friend after months of not seeing or talking to anyone. We went out to White Castle for a quick bite. She walks out first and hits the bottom step. As I'm walking out and locking the door, I hear something breaking tree limbs, crashing through them. Not fast and not slow, and definitely noticeable. It was coming from up high and gradually getting louder as it neared us. As it got lower, it reminded me of an orangutan or gorilla, the way it swung from branch to branch, and I could hear its hands gripping and snapping smaller limbs on its way. It was coming in our direction. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I'm crazy, until she turned around quickly and was looking up high in the trees, asking me, "Do you hear that?" I turned white and had felt the air get heavier from fear that was emanating from this thing. As I came down the stairs, she was staring into the trees, looking upward. I glanced and saw the branches moving. I yelled at her to get out of here quickly, pulling her toward the direction of the car. We turned our backs to the woods when this loud thwack landed just behind me, and all the hairs on my body stood. It felt like it had a log or a large, thick branch in its hand and was smacking the ground with it. I stood paralyzed in fear. The air was thicker and different when whatever it landed directly behind me. I could feel the air of the force of it, and it brought tears to my eyes. It was the weirdest feeling to have come over me, and feel like it's crushing every inch of my body without touching me, and it hurt bad. It brought tears to my eyes and made me shake uncontrollably, and the fear it made me feel was too much to bear. Hands down, one of the scariest moments I've ever encountered. I couldn't shake it. So we went to White Castle, and we both were shaken to our core. I'm disbelieving of what we had just witnessed. We come back and turn the lights on in her car and let them light up the woods for a good 20 minutes before we felt safe to go back inside. The only weapon I had in sight was a golf club. She told me she saw it high in the trees and that it looked almost like an owl-like creature with weird features. But later on, she told me a story when she was a teenager. She thought she was going to get taken off the back of a motorcycle by a huge owl swooping down towards her. And I told a friend about this a few months later and somehow remembered whatever this thing are. They feed off of fear. I don't know where I remember it from or why these thoughts randomly pop in my head. It's almost like something else is telling me. Since then, there has been a whole lot more weird crap happening. I've put a lot of pieces together in this experience so far, and a few weeks later, something else happened at a friend's house one night while we were playing music. It's something that has made me vow never to step foot in the woods ever again. I will share that part later with you when I have come to terms with it.
And there you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed today's bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps the channel to continue to grow and go. And honestly, what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories, judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, our family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events, well, they've happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.